This is the Louie Tee Network.
In the L.A.B room.
Exclusive.
The market.
Welcome, you are in the L.A.B room. I'm your host, Lou. Thank you for joining me here on the program. Free agency, day number 2. Otherwise known as here in the L.A.B room,
The market.
Remember, caveat emptor. Buyer beware. Check your merchandise. Because in this market, there are no receipts. Don't need that. Throw it in the trash. Because there are no refunds, no returns, no exchanges. Check your merchandise thoroughly before you go to the checkout counter. So, without any further ado, day number 2. Not as exciting, but just as important. Let's go to the market, do a little bit of shopping. You know the rules to the game. Let's play. So, day number 2 in the market, free agency in the National Football League. So you start out with the Miami Dolphins. They made a huge splash yesterday by going out and solidifying their left tackle position with bringing in the big guy, Brendan Albert, and gave him a huge deal to protect the blind side of one Ryan Tannehill. Today, the Dolphins look to kind of shore up that defensive tackle. It's all about the trenches in the National Football League. As much as we like to make about the quarterback and we like to talk about the skill guys, the receivers, the running backs, tight ends, it's about the trenches in the National Football League. If you can't get pressure on the quarterback, if you can't stop the run, if you can't protect the quarterback, if you can't run the football, then you don't have a chance in this league. And so the Dolphins shored up, or started to at least, because they got a lot of work to do on that offensive line. They've begun to shore up the offensive line by getting the most important position secured on their offensive line at left tackle yesterday. Today they come back and they want to shore up the interior of their defensive line. Remember, Paul Soliai, he jettisoned him out. He's now in Atlanta yesterday signing a deal with the Falcons. So, and Randy Starks, your other starting defensive tackle, he was on the market as well. Dolphins were able to bring him back 2 years, $12 million. So a guy that they had to franchise a year ago, they're able to bring him back for slightly less. Last year, he got tagged for about $8 million. This year, 2 year, $12 million deal looks about $6 million per year. So good deal for the Dolphins and Randy Starks being back. But this is the one that I'm excited about here. This is the guy that I think has the potential, when we look back on this free agency class, to be the best free agent. And I did not just stutter. And I know who I'm talking about here. Earl Mitchell, best free agent value in this free agency class. I think when we look back, 4 years, $16 million from the Dolphins to Earl Mitchell. And here's a guy from the Texans a season ago who's playing in a 3-4 defense. He feels like he's better suited to play in a 4-3. Earl Mitchell is a guy that I am enamored with. I think the world of this guy. And he's a guy that I think is going to come and turn some heads, open some eyes in Miami. Dolphins fans, you just got yourself a gem at the defensive tackle position in Earl Mitchell. And I talked about Louis Delmas. I forgot to talk about him yesterday, actually. And so I had to go ahead and bring it back and mention that Louis Delmas did sign a 1-year deal with this Dolphins football team. And so he's probably going to take the place of Chris Clemens in your secondary as a starter. It's a 1-year prove-it deal for Louis Delmas in Miami. So you move on to the Buffalo Bills. Bills had a little bit of inclement weather up in Orchard Park, so they're not able to have free agent visits. And so they've been hampered a little bit, but they still were busy on day 2 of free agency. Chris Williams, 4-year, $13.5 million deal. I'm a little lukewarm on him. He's been a journeyman around the league. Pretty much a solid offensive lineman. Nothing special about Chris Williams. But again, I don't know if they're looking for him to start or for him to just come in and compete. But that money to me says that they're looking for him to come in and vie for a starting position. So we'll see how that all shakes out in Buffalo. Corey Graham from the Baltimore Ravens. He was supposed to be visiting the Washington Redskins. He elected to skip over that visit and sign with the Buffalo Bills. That's a nice get for the Bills because he's a physical corner. He fits in with what the Bills were doing a season ago on defense. Very aggressive, attacking style of defense. Can make plays on the football. Corey Graham is going to fit right in with this Buffalo Bills defense. And Keith Rivers, linebacker, Giants linebacker, is now going to be a Buffalo Bill. I think he's going to get an opportunity to start here in Buffalo. And this is a guy with all of the measurables, all the physical skills necessary to be an elite linebacker in the National Football League, just has never developed, has never stayed healthy, hasn't been the guy that was drafted in the first round by the Cincinnati Bengals since he's gotten into the league. Maybe the Bills can do the same thing for him that they've done with another guy that I feel like has all the physical tools necessary to be elite, but hasn't done so throughout his career. Of course, I'm talking about Manny Lawson. So if they could get the most out of Keith Rivers like they did with Manny Lawson, they could be on to something in Buffalo. You move on to the Steelers. They made a couple of small signings, not a huge blip on the radar screen. Will Allen and Greg Warren both being signed back to one-year deals. Long snapper Greg Warren has been a long snapper in this league. He's going to be back, and Will Allen back at the safety position for the Pittsburgh Steelers. You move on to the Cleveland Browns. Isaiah Trufant, a young corner that was with the Jets for the last 3 seasons or so, moving on to Cleveland. Thought the Jets were going to try to sign him back. They did not. He's now a Cleveland Brown. You move on to the Philadelphia Eagles. Chris Maragos, special teams ace in Seattle, now moving on to the Philadelphia Eagles. 3-year, $4 million deal. So he got paid to play special teams, and he's going to come over and fill that void for the Philadelphia Eagles. Also, Brian Bramham from the Houston Texans, a linebacker, going to come in and try to play some linebacker as well. It seems like the Eagles like shopping at that Houston Texans store. You know, they have Connor Barwin. They also went and got one of the fullback slash H-back slash tight ends from the Houston Texans last year as well. Now they're digging into that Houston Texans stash once again by going and getting Brian Bramham. You look at the New Orleans Saints, it was a foregone conclusion. Many of us thought Pierre Thomas was gone. He was done in New Orleans. Looked like he was going to be one of those cap casualties because of the Jimmy Graham situation and trying to sign him long term. But miraculously, they signed him to a 2-year extension. He'll be back in New Orleans. And so good to see that because I'm a huge Pierre Thomas fan. Feel like he's a guy that does everything on the football field. Can run it, can pass protect, can catch it out of the backfield. Is tough as nails. You need 3 yards on 3rd and 3. He can get you 4. He's that type of back. And so I like Pierre Thomas a lot. Thought that they were going to make a mistake by letting him go. But again, if I had to choose between Pierre Thomas and Darren Sproles, I'd take Darren Sproles because he is the game changer. Pierre Thomas just does everything else. But he's back in New Orleans nonetheless. You look at the Denver Broncos. I talked about DeMarcus Ware yesterday, heading out to Denver to potentially see what could be out there for him in that Denver Broncos franchise. Well, I told you the Broncos had no intentions of letting him leave without a deal, and that's exactly what happened. 3 years, $30 million for DeMarcus Ware. He's now a Denver Bronco. The Broncos are bolstering that defensive unit, trying to catch up with the offense and the points that they're putting on the scoreboard. They've made another huge move in trying to get back to the Super Bowl for the 2nd consecutive year. You look at the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I told you that Josh McCown was going to be visiting the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and voila, Josh McCown, 2 years, $10 million deal. He's going to be a Tampa Bay Buccaneer. And from all reports, it seems like this guy is going to be the starter in Tampa Bay. And I got to say, I'm a little disappointed that Mike Glennon didn't get an opportunity to win that job. Not saying that it's Josh McCown's job and it's not up for discussion, but from what I'm hearing, it's Josh McCown's job to lose. And so I would have liked to have seen it be an open competition, or the other way around. It's Mike Glennon's job to lose since he was there last year, and I didn't think he played poorly. I actually thought he played well and well enough to deserve a chance to be a starter in Tampa Bay, but that's just me. Josh McCown is in Tampa Bay, and he looks like he's going to be the starter. 2 years, $10 million. New England Patriots, and this was the biggest signing of the day. We'll talk about it a little bit later on when I get to the releases, but Darrelle Revis, 1 year, $12 million deal. We'll talk about this extensively toward the end of the program. You move on to the Detroit Lions. Huge signing for the Lions. Golden Tate, 5 years, $31 million. Here's a guy that is extremely versatile, gives you added value as a punt returner, is tough as nails, reminds me a lot of a miniature Hines Ward. I mean, this guy catches the football, he snatches it out of the air. He's tough after he catches the football, yards after contact, yards after the catch. You call it what you want, he's going to deliver it either way. He's a guy that's hard to bring down, and he's going to complement the Detroit Lions in their offensive passing game. Now, I think they still need to go out and get another target. I don't know if Golden Tate is actually a number 2 receiver in this league or not. I think he has the potential to be that. But I like my Golden Tate in the slot. I don't know about you. You know, I like my Golden Tate in the slot. I'd love to see the Lions go and get another receiver to put outside and allow Golden Tate to work the slot and become a slot machine for this football team. You look at the Chicago Bears. They went out and made a couple of signings, bringing back Nate Collins, which I thought was huge because I thought he was starting to develop in the interior of that line, especially when Henry Melton went down. I thought he played solid for them. Good to see him coming back because I think he's on the cusp of starting to get it as a defensive tackle in this league. And they went out and stole a player from an interdivisional rival from the Packers. M.D. Jennings is coming over on a 1-year deal to play the safety position. Seems like the Bears have been playing musical chairs at the safety position, and they're just adding another participant to that game of musical chairs in Chicago at the safety position. M.D. Jennings will be a Bear in 2014. You move on to the next team, New York Giants. They were quite busy, have been for the last 2 days. They were extremely busy in day 1 of free agency. They are still busy in day 2, signing back John Beeson. I thought that was a huge move. I talked about it on the preview for the Giants in free agency. I said they needed to bring back John Beeson. They were a better defense when he stepped onto the field, and they haven't had the type of leadership and production that he gave them toward the middle of the season when he came over in that trade from Carolina, like they got out of Beeson. And so he needed to be back. It really wasn't up for discussion. They needed to sign John Beeson back, and so they did. J.D. Walton coming over from the Denver Broncos. He was injured, and he's a guy that can play that center position, and I think that's what they're going to look for him to do. And that coincides with another move that the Giants made earlier in the day, and I'll talk about that here in a second. And so J.D. Walton probably is going to get an opportunity to start at the center position for the New York Football Giants. You look at the Tennessee Titans. They went out and signed ex-Pittsburgh Steelers defensive tackle Al Woods. Here's a guy that I feel like is starting to get in the National Football League. Is getting pressure on the quarterback. Is huge and started the point of attack. Thought there was some really good upside with this guy, and I thought the Steelers should have made a play to hold on to Al Woods. Don't know if they did or not. But the Tennessee Titans get their man in Al Woods. They're going to add him to their defensive front. So with the Tennessee Titans changing their identity from a 4-3 to a 3-4 defensive look, Al Woods is definitely going to help them make that transition smoothly. He's a guy that can come in, get a little bit of pressure on the quarterback, as well as stop the run. A nice acquisition for the Tennessee Titans, one that won't be talked about a lot, but a guy that's going to do all of the dirty work for you along your defensive line. You look at the Green Bay Packers, talked about this one on the preview for free agency, needing to bring back Mike Neal. I'm all about bringing back my stuff. Bring back your stuff. Okay? And I'm all about bringing back guys that can get pressure on the quarterback. Mike Neal had his best season of his career to date last year, totaling 5 sacks. Thought that was more than enough for me in limited duty to bring him back onto this football team. Packers agreed with me. He's back in the fold in Green Bay. Redskins signing Bruce Campbell to a deal, 1-year deal. And this is essentially one of those, hey, this is your last shot, kid. You've got all of the potential in the world. You've got all the athleticism. This guy's oozing with athleticism at 6'6", 320. I mean, running a sub-4, 940 or something ridiculous like that. Huge vertical. I mean, the guy is an athletic marvel. However, it has not translated to production on the field. And so this is it for him. If he can't perform in Washington under this 1-year deal, if he doesn't make their roster, he's probably going to be out of the league. You look at Baltimore Ravens. Jacoby Jones, 4 years, $14 million deal to be back with the Ravens. And this one happened strangely because at the last moment, the Ravens must have swooped in and got him back, because the last time I saw Jacoby Jones, he was getting out of a truck, heading in to the New York Giants football facility. And so I'm thinking, man, the Giants have an opportunity to snag this guy away from the Ravens. And 30 minutes after I saw him walking into the New York Giants facility, I hear that he's back with the Baltimore Ravens. So that was a little odd to me. Maybe he wanted to go out and see what the Giants had to say, and he already had an offer from the Ravens, and if the Giants couldn't top that by a considerable amount, then he was going back to Baltimore, and maybe that's ultimately what the situation was and what happened with Jacoby Jones. Nonetheless, he's back in Baltimore for 4 more years. You look at the Kansas City Chiefs, relatively quiet in day one, but they lost a lot of stuff. They watched a lot of guys walk off of their offensive line. They lost Dexter McCluster as well yesterday. So it was a tough day for the Kansas City Chiefs. They bounced back in day 2, go out and get Joe Mays from the Texans, 2 years, $6 million. Also go and sign offensive lineman Jeff Linkenbach. He's a guy that can play tackle and guard. None of them extremely well, both of them solid. And so we'll see how he fits into their plans. And Hussein Abdullah, here's a guy that is extremely versatile, he's a safety, but can play a little bit of corner as well. He looked good in that AFC wildcard game, if you remember. He had about 2 picks in that game. So Hussein Abdullah is a guy that the Kansas City Chiefs deemed a integral part of their defense, and they brought him back onto their football team. You look at the New York Jets, and they got into free agency in day 2. Day 1, relatively quiet on the Jets front. They did make a move or 2 yesterday, but they got into the game in day 2 in a major way. Ledger Douzable is a defensive lineman that they wanted back, and they got him back. He'll be back in the fold for the New York Jets. Bruno Giacomini is a interesting story, because here's a guy from Seattle, wins a ring with the Seattle Seahawks, but had an injury-riddled season last year, but was solid for them when healthy. And so looking at him coming over to the Jets, they lose their right tackle in Austin Howard to the Oakland Raiders in day 1 of free agency. So they go out and replace him in day 2 with Bruno Giacomini. Great move by the Jets to help shore up that offensive line. And this was a move made late Wednesday night. Eric Decker, who seemed to have been at the Jets facility all day long, finally reaches a 5-year, $36.25 million deal to become the number 1 receiver in New York for the Jets. Huge move for both parties involved. Decker gets the deal he was looking for. The Jets get a number 1 receiver. Now the question is, can you get a signal caller to get him the football? That's not Eric Decker's problem. He's now the number 1 target on this team. Let's see how it works out for the Jets. That was something that they needed to do, and they're not done. They need another receiver in New York, maybe even 2. This team is starved of playmakers. They just got one in Eric Decker. You look at the Dallas Cowboys. We know about the saga with DeMarcus Ware coming to a head in day 1 of free agency, cutting him loose and him ending up in Denver. That freed up $7.5 million worth of cap space, so now the Cowboys can be a little bit more aggressive in free agency. That's what they did in day number 2, signing Jeremy Mincey, a 2-year, $4.5 million deal from the Denver Broncos, and also signing Terrell McClain, a defensive tackle that will add into their rotation. And so the Cowboys just getting revved up, just getting warmed up again. They still don't have a lot of cap space, so they'll have to be very shrewd in the moves that they make, but they're on the board in day 2 of free agency. The Seattle Seahawks re-signed Tony McDaniel to a 2-year, $6.3 million deal. They lost Clinton McDonald yesterday to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and it was reported that Jason Hatcher was supposed to be meeting with them. Just don't see them having enough capital to get Jason Hatcher to come in there. Maybe if they could sell him on a pitch. And look, Jason Hatcher made it abundantly clear last year. It's a money grab for him. I'm 32 years old. I'm not getting another contract after this. I got to break the bank, and I got to break it now. And so that Seattle visit for me was all about the Seahawks trying to convince him to take less to come to Seattle. It's not going to happen. Jason Hatcher is looking to get paid. And so they had to do something. They were able to hold on to their stuff in the form of Tony McDaniel. And also, I talked about this on the preview for the Seahawks in free agency. I said, look, Tavares Jackson is your 1994 Honda Civic, all right? It's your second car. It still runs. Sure, it's almost got 300,000 miles on it, but it's your car. Nobody else wants it. Keep your car. It serves more of a purpose to you than anybody else. That's exactly what they did, bringing back Tavares Jackson in Seattle. You also look at the Arizona Cardinals. They were busy in day number 1, signing up a huge tackle in Jared Valdir from the Raiders. Now they come back and they say, hey, let's get some of our stuff back and add more stuff to the mix. That's what they did, bringing back Marcus Bernard and Matt Shaughnessy. And I thought Matt Shaughnessy played well for you at that outside linebacker position. I said, hey, I'd love to see him come back to Arizona. He was out taking a few visits and in the end ultimately decided to come back to Arizona. They got their man back. And then they added a couple of guys in Jonathan Dwyer and Ted Larson to their football team. So Arizona Cardinals not sitting on their hands. They're out making moves, trying to become a player in that tough, nasty NFC West division. And so that's essentially the gist of day number 2 as far as players changing teams and teams re-signing their stuff in day number 2. Now let's get to some of the big releases from day number 2 in free agency. The Cleveland Browns cleared house at the quarterback position, getting rid of Brandon Weeden and Jason Campbell. Both of them were due roster bonuses here in the near future, and they went ahead and purged themselves of those 2 quarterbacks, leaving Brian Hoyer as the only quarterback on that roster. You look at Darrelle Revis. Let's stop here and talk about the Darrelle Revis move. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers gave themselves a self-imposed 4 o'clock deadline to get rid of this guy in day number 2. And really what it was because of was the fact that if they held on to Revis past 4 o'clock on Wednesday, they would have had to surrender a 3rd round pick versus a 4th round pick for Darrelle Revis in that trade that they made with the Jets. And so Tampa Bay said, hey, it's bad enough we paid this guy $16 million to just rehab. It's bad enough that we've already given up a 1st round pick. Let's not make this thing even worse. Let's not exacerbate this problem and make it a 3rd round pick instead of a 4th round pick. Let's get rid of this guy now since we can't find a trading partner. That's what the Tampa Bay Buccaneers did. And they talked about an arm race. They've been talking about an arms race in the National Football League, in the NFC, the arms race between the San Francisco 49ers and the Seattle Seahawks, and everybody trying to keep pace with what Seattle's doing because they're the cream of the crop. They're the big dogs in the NFC. And so they're talking about the arms race in the NFC, and then they're talking about the arms race in the AFC between the Denver Broncos and the New England Patriots, the 2 best teams in that conference. And we've watched the Denver Broncos make move after move after move that has kind of separated them from the rest of the pack in the AFC. They were already better than the teams in the AFC to begin with, and then you go out and you add Aqib Talib, you add TJ Ward, you add DeMarcus Ware, and all of a sudden you say to yourself, I don't think anyone in this conference can compete with the Denver Broncos. The Patriots said, hey, not so fast. You already took my corner from me. I have to do something. The Patriots fan base was getting a little worried. This was a move that had to be done. Darrelle Revis to the New England Patriots. 1 year, $12 million deal. I think the Patriots were up against it here. They had to make something happen to save face. And look, I'm still not that happy with the Patriots right now. I'll talk about that at a later date and time. But this was a move that had to be done. This was a move that was a great move for both parties involved. I think Darrelle Revis, everyone assumes, and I think it's the truth, that he's out for the money. He's the ultimate businessman. You can say what you want about him. He's greedy. I've called him greedy on several occasions. He's greedy. He's selfish. You call him what you want. I call the man one hell of a businessman. And as Jay-Z once eloquently put it, he's not a businessman. He's a businessman. So let him handle his business. Damn. And he just did. 1 year, $12 million. That brings his total of, I think, 7, 8 years of production in the league. $83 million. My God, that man has made himself some coin in the National Football League. And it's only for 1 year, so best believe if he goes out and performs, he'll be making double figures again next year. And so, Darrelle Revis he did it again, and the New England Patriots really didn't have a choice. You look at another release, David Ball's New York Giants. He's been injury prone ever since the Giants acquired him from San Francisco. Really never got what they thought they were getting out of him at the center position. They finally cut ties with him. Chris Clemens in Seattle. You knew this was a foregone conclusion when they got Michael Bennett back. You knew that Chris Clemens was probably going to be the odd man out. They still got Cliff Averill. They got Bennett back. Again, you can't hold on to all your stuff. And after that ACL injury, he kind of was the forgotten man in Seattle. And so this one, I saw this one coming. And he's already made a direct beeline to Jacksonville. It seems like after Seattle gets rid of a player on the defensive side of the football, they make a direct beeline to go link up with Gus Bradley in Jacksonville. They're turning into the Jacksonville Seahawks out there in Jacksonville. And so Chris Clemens seems to be in the latter stages of signing a deal with the Jacksonville Jaguars. David Stewart, longtime tackle in Tennessee. This one also had the writing on the wall of him being cut from the Titans. His cap number, way too high. The production was solid, but not at the number that he was making. I think it's time for the Titans to start to infuse some young life into their offensive line along the tackle positions. Anyhow, Ruse and Stewart had been the stalwarts out there at tackle for at least the last 8 to 9 seasons straight. And so it's time to kind of shake up that tackle position and get some young blood outside at the tackle positions for the Titans. David Stewart no longer a tackle for the Tennessee Titans. And Isaac Sopoaga was released by the New England Patriots. Patriots were desperate in the middle of the season last year, traded for him from Philadelphia. Just never really worked out for the Patriots the way they hoped. And so they cut ties with Isaac Sopoaga. And the last bombshell of Wednesday night, you had the Revis deal to the Patriots. That was huge. Then Decker looked like it was going to be the last of the news on Wednesday night. And then you get Roger Saffold's blunder out in Oakland. We talked about how the Raiders sort of dropped the ball by not bringing back Jared Valdir and overpaying for Roger Saffold. Well, maybe the Oakland Raiders had a case of buyer's remorse. I don't know. But he's had an injury history that has been checkered to be very, very modest. Let's just say that. He's been a guy that's been injury prone. And it seems like going into that deal, the Raiders might have said to themselves, maybe we made a mistake here. Maybe we should have did a little bit more due diligence on this guy. I don't know, but he takes the physical. They don't like what they see. Raiders owner Mark Davis says, I don't like this guy's shoulder. I don't want to do this deal. Get him out of here. And so Roger Saffold tucks his tail between his legs and makes a beeline back to St. Louis. And they say, hey, we know what you are. We know what you have going on. Welcome back. Welcome back. Welcome back. Welcome back. Welcome back. And now he's back in St. Louis looking to sign that same 5-year deal the Oakland Raiders were going to give him, but for a lot less money. So another blow, devastating blow to the very sluggish start to offseason for the Oakland Raiders. I told you I didn't like the move then. I definitely don't like it now. So that's day 2 in a nutshell. In the market, a lot of things transpiring in the first 2 days of free agency. And again, now everything is going to start to settle in. Teams are going to start to focus in on guys that aren't going to cost as much. That wide receiver market, now that Eric Decker has signed, so has Golden Tate, it's going to start to settle in, and guys are going to start finding homes. Expect Ben Tate to find a home here shortly as well. And then you'll start to see veterans find their places, and quarterbacks will start to look and pick and choose from their destinations. And so now everything is going to settle in. The first 2 days of free agency are where it's at for the most part. Now, this is where you get your value buys. And when you go into the market, you're going to be a little bit more selective in what you pick up off the rack and put into your cart. And so that's been the first 2 days of free agency. I'll keep you abreast of what's going on moving forward, but you won't get a video every single day. The first 2 days are the most crucial in free agency in terms of getting the big names. Now everything else will start to settle. The market will start to settle, and guys will find homes. We'll keep track of the Steve Smith situation. That's probably going to come to a head here shortly. Also, the Chris Johnson situation is worth monitoring. And so we'll keep an eye on all that stuff. You know how we do it here in the lab room. If it happens in the National Football League, whether big or small, we cover it all here in the lab room. You know how I do it. Thank you for joining me. I'll be back to continue to give you coverage of free agency in the National Football League. Deuces. Like the content? Want more? Sub up.
In the L.A.B room.